Well, thank you for joining us on another busy night of news here on Detroit's only nightly political talk show. This is The Pulse. I am Brandon Hudson. We got new rules issued by the Pentagon for press wanting to work in the building. But here's the catch. Most outlets, they're not signing on. And tonight we're taking a closer look at which outlets did not sign on, and we're going to tell you the one that did. Plus, we're hearing from a man who not only taught journalism, but was a Wall Street Journal reporter who was covering the administration. Plus, with the state budget signed, we are taking a closer look at the impact that will have. No taxes on tips, overtime pay. We're talking with a financial advisor about what you need to know. Well, Monday was a day of elation, joy. Some weren't even sure if we would see this happen. President Donald Trump signed a new deal which brokered peace. All 20 living Israeli hostages were released. 1,900 Palestinian prisoners were freed as well. But Hamas security forces have returned to the streets of Gaza, which could threaten the truce. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the war will not end until Hamas is dismantled. And part of President Trump's plan calls for Hamas to disarm and hand power over to an internationally supervised body. The president said today he spoke to Hamas, adding that the militant group says it'll disarm.
We have told them we want to disarm, and they will disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently. But they will disarm. Do you understand me?
Hamas also turned over the bodies of more dead hostages. The move came after an Israeli military agency said that it would slash aid deliveries to Gaza by more than half. Well, that was due to the concerns the group has that they were handing remains over slower than they agreed to. Now, we'll get to national news here. Day 14, still no deal to reopen the government. And as the Trump administration threatens more mass layoffs, neither Democrats nor Republicans appear to be any closer to a deal. More than 4,000 workers got layoff notices over the weekend. As the blame game continues, Democrats want Affordable Care Act subsidies extended, but Republican leaders say they have nothing to talk about until the government reopens.
Hiring and threatening to fire federal employees is part of the Trump administration's campaign to inflict trauma on our federal workforce.
It doesn't have to be this way. Chuck Schumer, if you open the government today, this would end.
All it does is keep the lights on at the current funding levels for a few extra weeks while we complete the normal appropriations process.
Over the weekend, President Trump told the Pentagon to use all available funds to make sure troops are paid. The Pentagon said that it tapped into the $8 billion unused research dollars to make payroll. Well, back here in Michigan, if you were watching on social media over the weekend, hopefully you had your popcorn ready because you might have seen a war of words between two of our state's leaders, Attorney General Dana Nessel and Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist, after Gilchrist called for new voices in the Democratic Party. Now, we're going to get back to that back and forth in a second. But first, we should point out that Gilchrist is far from alone. We want to take you back nearly a year ago. Not only did the Democrats lose the White House, but they also lost both chambers of Congress and the Michigan State House. The party faced fierce criticism for its messaging after the election. Now, in February, both the Democratic National Committee and State Democratic Party elected new chairs after the previous ones announced that they wouldn't run again. But since Ken Martin took over the DNC, party has been plagued with some infighting. Now, all of this comes as Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan sent shockwaves through the race for governor when he, as a career Democrat, announced that he was leaving the party and running as an independent instead.
I'm not running to be the Democrats' governor or the Republicans' governor. I'm running to be your governor.
Okay, let's get back to the Lieutenant Governor, Garlin Gilchrist. He posted a tweet with the caption, quote, "We have enough lawyers in the Democratic Party. We need builders with new ideas." Now, as you can see, that post also included a video where he said this.
I'm frustrated with Democrats. I mean, it's frustrating. You have too many Democrats that just are beholden straight up to corporate interests, to millionaire and billionaire donors. You got too many Democrats who are scared to have a fight about anything important. That's why people have been not just frustrated, but have been making other choices. It's why you get an uncommitted movement. It's why we lose people like young men and why we have been losing voters of color.
Well, and that is where the Attorney General comes in, because those comments did not sit well with her. Nessel responded, pointing to the hundreds of lawsuits that were filed to try and block moves that were made by the Trump administration. She went on to say this, quote, for the lieutenant governor and a candidate who for the highest elected office in the state to fail to appreciate the important role that lawyers play in today's current landscape and our nation's history is deeply concerning and offensive to those of us who have fought tirelessly to protect the rights of so many in our state. Back to the lieutenant governor, who sent us a statement saying that Democratic AGs, that they are important and they must be protected because they fight for our rights. But he added, quote, we also need non-lawyers who bring diverse perspectives among them. Having a law degree and or having practiced law is currently the most common background for senators, members of Congress, and governors. It is time we elect people from diverse backgrounds to fix this broken system. Now, a lot said on both sides. Now, we asked Oakland University political science professor Dave Dulio to weigh in.
2024 was a year where Democrats lost significant chunks of important voting blocks. Just here in Michigan, it's blue collar workers, it's African Americans, it's particularly African American men.
Now, this is where the widespread agreement in the Michigan Democratic Party, who says the left needs to do something different after those massive losses last year. Well, this is just scratching the surface. So let's pick up the pace. We're going to run through some other big stories that we're on top of tonight. The United States struck another small boat accused of carrying drugs in the waters off of Venezuela. That's according to President Trump. 6 people on board the boat died. It is the 5th deadly strike in the Caribbean. Trump administration says it is treating accused drug traffickers as unlawful combatants who need to be met with military force. The president cited intelligence, which he says confirmed that the boat was carrying drugs, was a part of drug networks, and was known as a known trafficking route. A senior advisor at the State Department is accused of illegally printing classified documents and storing more than 1,000 pages of highly sensitive government records. Ashley Tellis is also a contractor in the Defense Department's Office of Net Assessment. Now, he was charged in federal court after agents found them in his home over the weekend. Authorities say that the documents were stored in the file cabinets and trash bags. He's detained pending a detention hearing next week. And President Trump posthumously awards conservative activist Charlie Kirk the Medal of Freedom. Is the highest civilian honor. A gunman shot and killed Kirk last month while speaking at a college in Utah. His widow, Erica Kirk, accepted the award on his behalf. The ceremony happened on what would have been Kirk's 32nd birthday. To the Pentagon now, where only one outlet signed on to the Defense Department's new press rules. We're talking about One America News, or OAN, the ones on the left side of the screen that refused to. So you see everybody else who did not, and then you see OAN. Well, this makes it likely that the Trump administration will evict reporters from the Pentagon. The new rules bar journalists from access to much of the Pentagon without an expert. They also say Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth can revoke access to reporters who ask anyone at the Defense Department for information not approved for release. It doesn't matter whether the information is classified or not. Today, NBC News, Fox News, CNN, CBS News, and ABC News released this joint statement saying they joined with virtually all other news organizations in declining to agree to the requirements. It went on to say, quote, the policy is without precedent and threatens core journalistic protections. We will continue to cover the U.S. military as each of our organizations has done for many decades, upholding the principles of free and independent press. The Trump administration has been repeatedly accused of restricting freedom of press. We're talking with a former Wall Street Journal reporter and an Oakland University instructor, John Stoll, about the changes covering this administration and what every journalist must do moving forward. You're watching The Pulse right here on Fox 2. We're back now on The Pulse, covering all things people, power, and politics. Here to talk about the new restrictions on the press at the Pentagon and covering the Trump administration in general. We got John Stoll. He's the managing director of Ridgely Walsh and a former Wall Street Journal reporter. John, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
Better
than the media are at the Pentagon right now.
Right. Do you miss those days?
I mean, for an adrenaline junkie with a short attention span, you betcha. You know, it was the best way to make a buck. Definitely spent a long time, 20 years, mostly in Detroit, with the Detroit Bureau of the Wall Street Journal, but also in Washington and overseas with the Journal and some local publications as well. And yeah, absolutely, I miss those days. It's like I miss college.
Right. I hear you. Yeah,
but you know, I'm still working a lot with the media, so I get my taste.
And we're glad we have you here.
Yeah.
Look, so we showed that little chart earlier where you have basically every single media outlet that is covering the Trump administration on one side saying they don't agree with this agreement with the Pentagon, and then you have OAN on the opposite end. Just your thoughts on the Trump administration trying to flex its power over the media.
Right. I think Hegseth handed a gift to all of these newsrooms. OAN didn't take it, but that's a different story. Every single one is going to say no dice because it's a question of who's going to blink first. There is the power of the pen. Reporters can do their job without access, often have been forced to do their job without credentialed access. And so, you know, obviously they're trained to do so. The Pentagon could face a legal challenge here because it is a First Amendment infringement from all appearances of it. Pentagon has their own reason for doing this, but I do think that in this case, they're going to have to back down at some point.
I think at some point since we have been having the Trump administration back in office, we've talked about how their moves are similar to what we want to see from, or what we've seen from state-run media in other countries. Are we anywhere even close to that with this?
I don't think so. I think the Defense Department of War now is a bit of an outlier in terms of its naivete, in terms of the way it deals with the press. I do think it's been a rocky, choppy 9 months for the Defense Department in general. There's been time after time now where Hegseth talked about transparency and didn't give it. You can look at the Trump administration at large through two different lenses. It's like any other White House. It's difficult to cover, and they want to spin their own narrative, and they're going to fight tooth and nail to do that and to limit access where they can. In particular, there has been more access in terms of more press briefings. I mean, this is basically an administration that's playing out in front of cameras all the time. So it is which way you look at it. And then the last thing is there's so much more attention on the news media right now because there are so many more media influencers and news outlets covering that it is a little bit hard to argue that we aren't getting access to information. That doesn't mean that the Trump administration, like the Obama administration, like the Biden administration, aren't fighting to spin the narrative. That's what politicians and administrations do. I
think this is one of the first times we've really seen media as a collective. Does it matter whether it's conservative or left-leaning, liberal?
Right.
They all kind of come together. Is this one of those situations that may be a turning point in covering the administration?
Well, I definitely think for the mainstream media, there's been a couple of inflection points during the administration. One was when the AP decided not to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. People came down on both sides of that argument because of the AP's influence over all news style. Many, including the White House Press Association, sided with the AP, and it had a catalyzing effect for the mainstream media. I think this is another opportunity you see on that chart. Newsmax, for instance, not considered the mainstream media. In fact, they're a fairly Republican-leaning newsroom. Some others, Washington Examiner. So it's not like this is just a left-biased mass media, affront to the administration. This definitely is something that they all agree on. The problem is how many people are listening, because what the media is dealing with right now is what politicians have been dealing with for a long time, which is a trust issue. And they can rattle the saber all they want, but are people empathetic to this, or do they just say, hey, go do your job, and will they? Now, the Trump administration does have a narrative here that they're trying to restrict access legitimately, and this will play out in the court. So we'll see it play out for quite some time. Now's the opportunity for the media to remind people why they exist, why journalism is important, and why the First Amendment is a cornerstone of democracy, and how this threatens that cornerstone of democracy, if it indeed does.
Look, we're living in a world of new media where not only are journalists competing with each other, but they're competing with the YouTubes,
Right.
the TikToks, the Instagrams. If you are a young journalist and you're a professor, you've been a professor
Yep.
before, what do you need to learn from this entire situation?
Yeah, I think number one is the basics of the job, which are that there's always going to be barriers, and there's always going to be people trying to keep you from the truth or keep you from telling the story. The Pentagon is a perfect historical example with the Vietnam War and what happened with all of the cover-ups through different administrations with different political stripes. And those are great opportunities to learn why the press exists and why, no matter how you communicate your message, whether it's through YouTube or TikTok or X or in mainstream, Fox 2, is that this profession is really important because it is under a lot of pressure because of the business model, for one, but also because of the trust factor. To do this job the right way with transparency, but also with integrity, is something that needs to be done in a world where everybody thinks they're a journalist, where we are the media now is a common refrain.
Hey, John, I appreciate you,
Yeah,
man.
no problem.
Thank you so
Anytime.
much. You're
Yep.
always welcome back.
Okay, appreciate it.
All right, look, we're going to dive deep into the impact of our state budget. We will have that next. We're talking about no taxes on overtime or tips. Two major highlights. Financial advisor is going to take a closer look. That's next on The Pulse. It is People, Power, and Politics. Welcome back to Detroit's only nightly political talk show, The Pulse, here to talk about the impact of our state budget. Will it have elder law attorney and financial advisor Pat Simasco. Pat, it is good to see you. How you
Thanks
doing?
for having me.
Welcome to The Pulse.
Thank you.
We're always talking about money here.
It matters. Money matters.
Money was a big factor in the election, and it was a big talking point in the budget that we just passed here in the state. First, I want to ask you about no taxes on tips. For a lot of people, especially our servers at our restaurants, what is it they need to know about this ruling here?
Right. So the first thing they need to know is they still have to report their tips. And it's important because not only do you have to report it for the federal government and also for the state. For the federal government, I see a lot of people want to retire, and their main income in retirement is their Social Security. And if they're a self-employed person or their main income is through tips, and they're not reporting, that's not going into their Social Security calculation. So when they retire, they won't have any Social Security, or it'll be very, very, very low. So they still have to report them, whether or not it's going to be taxed or not. They still have to report them.
I think in total, a lot of people are going to be getting a little bit more money.
A little bit.
Yeah, but you don't want to go crazy with that money that you have. I know some people will see that, their eyes will get bigger, they'll start thinking about things they want to get.
Yeah.
Let's help folks reel it in here.
Look, nobody has pensions anymore. Very few of the younger generation is saving as much as the older generations did. So they're going to be relying on Social Security. They have to start saving for retirement, putting it into an IRA. When you're working under the normal job, they're taking money out for your 401k plan. They're paying into FICA for you, stuff like that. So if you're not going to be having the employer do it for you, you have to be regimented and do it for yourself. You have to plan for retirement. And kids, they'd rather, let's buy one more cup of coffee for $8 and another iPhone and another whatever, or they have credit card debt coming through their ears. Pay down that debt, get rid of it.
Do you see more people when they're getting more money like this kind of situation, or they're getting tight on money, say like we're seeing with the federal shutdown?
We're seeing that people are getting tighter. Credit card debt's going up. Okay. They're looking at, the interest rates went up, mortgages are up, credit cards up. So they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So any little bit that you have, whether it's a little bit with a pay increase or a reduction in taxes, look for your long-term planning. Start young, so later on you'll have something in retirement.
Let's talk about these retirees, because a lot of them, they're our parents, grandparents, but they need help. They need help too. Look, What is it that a lot of people need to realize when they're in that next chapter of their life, that they don't have a steady income, they're working on and living on a fixed income?
Yeah, it's really tough. And we've had clients come in where they're trying to decide, do they pay their credit card debt? Do they pay their prescription coverage? Do they pay their mortgage? Food is last. So the younger you start planning, the better. Get your debt paid off, get your credit card debt paid off, get as much of that out of the way, and then try and build up as much of a savings as you can.
How much money are we saying to put aside for these payments here? $200, $300, $400 a month?
Every dime that you can, put it away. Don't go to don't go to the coffee shops and get the $8 cup of coffee. You can get one from your kitchen. It tastes exactly the same, if not better. Focus on that type of stuff, because the more that you spend now, and especially on credit card debt, that is good. That cup of coffee that you spend $8 for is going to be an $80 cup of coffee in a couple years, because that debt is going to just keep rolling over and over and over. It's a credit card trap.
You know, it's funny. My wife and I, we recently had a conversation with my 6-year-old daughter about debt.
Yes.
And she asked about credit cards and debt. And I know she's not at that age where she's going to fully understand it.
Yes.
But I know that, you know, in a few years, 5, 6, 7 years from now, it will be very important for a lot of parents to have these conversations.
Yes.
Do you run into that situation?
Yeah, and we're talking to our kids about that debt as you're going to the store to buy them their 5th bicycle and their 7th video game and all those other things. The parents are the worst offenders of it. Do as I say, not as I do. So lead by example, put away for retirement. This income tax change is not going to affect a lot of people. There's not going to be any big clouds opening up. It's not that big of a deal, but it's an opportunity they can be focused and say, okay, you know, we got a little opportunity now. Let's start doing the savings. Let's start reporting the income appropriately. Let's make sure that Aunt Mary's doing our tax return versus going to H&R Block or one of the other places. They're going to have the updated software to know that it's being taxed appropriately. Also, if you hear, oh, we don't have to pay tax on our tips, don't think you don't have to report it. You still have to. So all those people, it's going to be easier now for them because so much of the tips is on credit cards. When you pay your restaurant bill, it's on credit card, so the tip will be reported. It's the cash ones that they really need to make sure they report.
Pat, we appreciate it, man. And look, these things, they don't last forever. But take advantage of the window when you can.
Yeah. I'll be back when they change.
Yes, please do. So you're always welcome. So, look, that is it for The Pulse tonight. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brandon Hudson. Have a good night.